You may remember I mentioned 3 years ago that we had our conference in Beijing. And the theme at that conference was that there was a sea change that was taking place in the way that we were thinking about sustainability and particularly about sustainable finance. And we saw the results of some of that sea change last year in the big multilateral declarations, the Sustainable Development Goals, and perhaps even more, the Paris a climate conference, COP21. You know, I was given a book about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was called Why Change Happens. And it had as a case study the Paris Climate Conference. Why was it that the Paris Climate Conference had been successful when the previous Copenhagen conference had not worked? It thought that there were 3 reasons. One was that there was a political will to do something from our political leaders. The second was that technologies had improved, so it was possible to think about things happening that had not been possible a few years earlier. But the third, and I thought the most interesting reason they reckoned change happened, was because of the support of business and finance for finance to change, for a deal to be done, for sustainability to be recognized. You could see that by the fact that there were $24 trillion of investors who signed the petition to the Paris conference saying, please do a deal, make an arrangement that will make the world sustainable. $24 trillion. Finance, not the bogeyman of progress, finance pushing for progress. And those announcements that took place in Paris, they didn't come overnight. They came because of years and years and years of work by people like Ceres or the IIGC or all the people within the fund management industry who came together to sign that petition, hundreds of them. They came together through the Principles for Responsible Investment, the Montreal Pledge, 10 trillion that would said that they would declare how they were invested, how sustainably they were invested. They came about as a result of the sustainable stock exchanges founded in 2012. I think 50 will be their number at this conference. They came about because of all those changes that had taken place over years and years. But Paris was a milestone and not an end, because Paris did not agree what everybody had to do. It simply agreed that we needed to keep our climate lower than 2 degrees. It was not a detailed roadmap. It threw back to us how it was that we were going to address this challenge. A challenge not just to governments, but to business and, of course, to finance, for us to draw up the roadmap for ourselves. And it's in that context that understanding is so important, as Christian said at this conference, to shed light on the problem, but also to learn from others what it is that they're doing and to think about where we can be going from here. A challenge for us all to take away: this is the world's most important problem. If we don't solve this one, we are in trouble. A challenge to resolve, but also perhaps an opportunity to be inspired. And I hope that we may hear some of that both in the examples that we'll be looking at as we go through the couple of days, and in some other things that we've got to show you. So our first session, and if I could invite them onto the stage now, we'll start looking at policy and how we take policy forward into practice. Leisha Norona will be leading this. Leisha, please, if you would come to the platform, who is the person in UNEP, deputy head responsible for business and for finance, and she'll be joined by Tani El Zayudi, who has been before, Nadia Abid from the Commercial International Bank of Egypt, and Lars Tunnel, formerly of the IFC, if you would like to come to the stage. This session will last until a coffee break, which we will have for 15 minutes. We'll then have a second plenary session. We'll break for lunch, and then there are some smaller breakout sessions that will be taking place after lunch, and we will come back then to a plenary. But for now, let me hand over to you, Lija, for our first discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Minister, Governor, distinguished guests, members of the UNEP-FI, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Nations Environment, welcome to this very, very interesting event, which I'm sure you will enjoy thoroughly. You've already heard so many very interesting announcements, declarations from the United Arab Emirates government, and we are very, very grateful, not just for those declarations, but also to the Minister for hosting us here today. We're very happy to be here, and we're very happy to learn from each other from this particular sharing experience and the event that is being hosted for the next 2 days. Mine is a simple role, the role of the moderator for this session. I'm not going to make any big speeches, but it is to help facilitate this session, which has 3 very interesting speakers. We have with us Dr. Nadia Makram-Abed, the former Minister of Environment of Egypt, and the board member of the the Commercial International Bank. And we have Dr. Lars Tunnel, the chair of the Africa Risk Capacity and the former CEO of the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank Group. And of course, we have Minister Tani with us from the United Arab Emirates Ministry of Climate and Environment. And he's asked to be the 3rd speaker, so that is why I've introduced this in this particular order. Ladies and gentlemen, this session is about opening doors and financing sustainability. We all have heard already the kind of challenges that we face. We have climate change, we have degradation of capital, we have the growth of inequalities across the world. This is a situation in which we see premature deaths from air pollution, we see migration due to disasters and conflicts, we see a lot of sadness and despair, but we also see a lot of growth, we see a lot of opportunities, and we see the possibilities of a great transformation. And it is because of this that we're here together today, to be able to share what is it that we can do to address the risks and the opportunities that this particular stage in time presents to us. And why is this important? This is important because, as we've already heard, and I've been asked to make a very brief presentation on the 4 very important agreements that took place in 2015, and even one in 2016, which shape this world into which we hope to address our financing needs and our financing possibilities. So I'm not going to go into detail, but if I could have the presentation. Right. You have here the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and you have the Sustainable Development Goals which go with them. And it's very important to think of them in the context of our financing needs. The goal 17 is the goal that speaks to partnerships, the goal that speaks to finance. But if you look at all of these different 17 goals that we have, they have different opportunities and different risks for the financial sector, which we need to think about. I'm not going into the origins of this because we've already heard about this. We've already heard about how the countries came together to sign up to this in September 2015. This is momentous. This is something that is unprecedented, but which charts for us the next 15 years. But if you look at each of those goals, you will see what kind of risks they present to the world and to the finance sector if we do not address them, and what kinds of opportunities they also present in order to take this forward. We then have the Paris Climate Agreement. And the Paris Climate Agreement, which comes into force, as we all know, on the 4th of November of 2016, signs us up to our nationally determined contributions. These nationally determined contributions are very much a bottom-up approach to addressing what is it that we need to do to get to the 2 degrees centigrade, or even better, to the 1.5 ambition that we all have. And this 1.5 ambition has just become possible, perhaps, through the Kigali Agreement that was just signed up last week, and to which we are incredibly grateful to all the member states for making this possible, and to all the businesses and the private sector that supported it so wholeheartedly. We then have the Sendai. If you could have the next slide, the Sendai Agreement, which was actually the very first one of the 2015 agreements on issues affecting our sustainability. The Sendai Agreement was about disaster risk reduction, and this speaks very much to a lot of the concerns that we have as a result of climate change and as a result of other natural disasters that we've been seeing around the world. This conference spoke to 4 lines of action: understanding risks, preparing for risks, reducing risks through disaster risk reduction, and building resilience and preparedness for disasters. And it is incumbent upon us as an international community to really think of ways in which we can build this risk capacity. And you're going to hear about that in this opening session. And finally, we have the agenda which we signed up to in the Addis Ababa Agreement for Financing of Sustainable Development, which again had 7 lines of action across both domestic and international resources, across the systemic issues that plague our systems and policies, and across a number of other issues such as trade and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, let me not take up any more of your time. Let me turn to our speakers here, very knowledgeable, who bring to this particular session not only experiences as policymakers, but also experience as financiers. So let me first turn to Dr. Nadia, and I'm going to take my seat there so that I don't dominate this conversation. We have with us Dr. Nadia, who was not only the former Minister of Environment of Egypt, but is also now on the board of the Commercial International Bank. And to her, I ask, Dr. Nadia, can you share with us any of the really good examples of how you brought together the financial sector in addressing sustainability when you were the Minister of Environment, and now you're taking forward in the context of the work that you're doing with the Commercial International Bank?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say that in Egypt, protection of the environment, what can I tell you, is perhaps as old as the pyramids. And the ancient pharaohs, they had this commandment which said, "Thou shalt not pollute the waters of the river Nile." And I believe the continuity is there, past, present, and future. Well, the Ministry of the Environment in Egypt was established in 1997, and that was before the Global 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. But we did have, I was working with a wonderful group of particularly young men and women, and the future is theirs. So we did have our green agenda for action and change, in addition to a strategic policy framework and, of course, a gender unit. In addition, also an environment protection fund. And I think of 5 drivers, 5 main drivers that really enabled us to mobilize funds. First, law enforcement, rule of law. You do it through compliance and also enforcement. Political will, we spoke about political will and public support. And I think, you know, one of the main challenges, we have the prescriptions, we have what to do, we have so many things, recipes. But I think the main challenge, ladies and gentlemen, is here in the ideas. How can people buy into this? We need to build trust with people, and we were fairly successful in doing that. We also undertook cost of environmental degradation assessments, and that helps because it puts a monetary value on what you're doing. And most importantly, we also had this inclusive approach, constant and consistent dialogues with so many stakeholders and so many partners, and including Let me also hasten to say our very tough Minister of Finance. Most of them are, by the way. And I remember whenever he used to see me, he used to say, "Good morning, Nadia, no money." But, but finally and happily, he bought into what we're doing, and I believe over the years he became one of our staunchest supporters. So to make a long story short, we did manage to mobilize significant funds, including $100 million for a River Nile pollution prevention program, and we declared the River Nile free from polluted industrial wastewater discharge. Okay, moving on. Today, Egypt has its 2030 vision, and this is very much aligned with the global agenda and the SDGs, because it's always good to think beyond the horizon. In the Commercial International Bank, CIB, this is the leading private sector bank in Egypt, and I'm privileged to be a board member in CIB. We know and believe, like many of you, that the new global agenda stresses not just development cooperation. That, of course, is very important in and of itself. But it also stresses the importance of structural economic transformation. And that is very closely linked with our thinking, with our philosophy, and also with our evolving green journey of transformation and change. And we are also standing, actually in the bank, we are standing on two main pillars, two main foundations. The first is a clear vision, and the second is, what else? Pragmatic action. We believe, again, like many of you, that responsible business and sustainable social and environmental issues are two profitable partners, not just very nice friends, profitable, because you can make friends, you can make money out of this. Two profitable partners. And it was in this spirit that we established our sustainability department. This was in March 2013, with a number, actually, of promising strides along the road. And well, we don't have time, and I'll just be very, very brief. Sustainability is now an integral part of our vision and mission statements. And it is also an integral part of our strategic planning, our policies, and our practices. What I want to say, it's becoming progressively anchored into the culture and mindset of the bank. Very important also, social and environmental risks are integrated into the mainstream decision-making process of the bank. We're very proud, actually, to have joined UNEP FI, and I believe we were the first bank to do that. And we also participate in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. Another thing that CIB cares very much about is CSR, corporate social responsibility, because this is also very, very important. And we have the CIB Foundation, which finances a lot of things, but we are really concentrating on healthcare of children, healthcare and nutrition services for the children. And I can tell you, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to tell you, we go and we visit hospitals, and this also has a human and emotional dimension. We have in Egypt a cancer hospital for children. It's called 57 357. We go, we visit them, we take them presents, and you should see the CIBians, as the staff likes to call itself, proudly call itself. They go, they wrap the presents. And I remember going there several times, and the children like to come and take photos. So there was this little girl, 4-year-old girl, and she said, "Can you carry me?" I took her in my arms, and I carried her. I didn't want to leave her. So all along, let's go back to the hard-nosed figures and facts. All along, we spent £250 million, which is roughly about $30 million, and also reaped several awards and international recognitions. If you want to know more about this, we have here our sustainability report and 2 other brochures if you would like to know more about this green journey of transformation. One of the also the sort of encouraging and promising things is the fact that the CIB chairman happens to be the head of the Federation of Egyptian Banks, so we find that this has a very rewarding ripple effect. Well, I think one of the most important things anybody needs to have, because as I said, we have the recipes, we have the reports, we have this, we have that, but we also have, and others have as well, a can-do spirit, a determined can-do spirit, because ladies and gentlemen, you know, this for me and for others I know is a powerful renewable resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nadia, but I cannot but ask you one question. You said the finance minister said no money. How did you convince him to give you money?
By nagging, of course. That's one thing, but it was more than that. By substance, telling him, because environment was still relatively new. Remember, this was in 1997, and sustainable finance was just perhaps crawling then. But I used to talk to him, not just me. I had a very, very strong and committed, passionate team. We went, we spoke to him, we took him on field trips. I was hardly in my office, taking him to see the pollution, to see the people, and at the end he said, all right, and he started giving us money. He started replenishing our environment fund, and what can I tell you, he became maybe more loyal than the king.
Very good. Let me turn to Lars Tundl, because we've heard that risk is one of the biggest issues that we face from the context of both disasters as well as climate change impacts that may happen in the future. Lars is the chair of the Africa Risk Capacity, but has also been the CEO of the International Finance Corporation for very many years. Lars, I know you have tremendous experience. It'd be really useful for us to understand, in the context of the links between risks, disasters, and development, what can the insurance sector do to help bridge this gap?
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the invitation to this very important conference, and congratulations both to UNEP and to the government of Dubai to having gotten everybody together in a big room like this for this very important subject. Well, I think there is a very important link between insurance and development. And if you look at it, G7 recently decided that 400 million people by 2020 should be covered by natural disaster insurance in the developing world. So I think they have also recognized this. And I use Africa Risk Capacity Limited as an example, and then I come back and try to broaden that a little bit and draw some conclusions from it. What is Africa Risk Capacity Limited? The African Union came together and established a special treaty back in I think it's 4 or 5 years ago, to really try to create a mutual insurance company to handle the natural disasters like drought, like flood, like cyclones. And we started up this company. There is a Africa Risk Capacity Agency, which is kind of the political arm, and you have Africa Risk Capacity Limited, which is a mutual insurance company for African states. We were financed, the capital came from DFID of the UK and KfW of Germany, $200 million that has to be repaid in 20 years. And we started up, and the first year we insured 5 countries, I think it was. This year we insured 7. I think it's now 29 or 30 countries have actually signed the treaty and would like to join us over time. And the premiums that are paid are basically commercial rates. We are reinsuring ARC in the international capital insurance markets. We have 24 companies that supports us. The first year we had a drought in West Africa. and we paid out, I think, $24 million. We helped 1.3 million people, and we helped to save the lives of, I think, 700,000 cows and sheep. So you really see the benefit. And the important thing here is that we are using satellite technology to measure how much it rains. And by doing that, we can actually see very early on what's happening. We know that there's going to be a drought. And by doing that, we can actually have a payout very, very quickly. And basically when the season is over. And all studies shows that if you can get to the people who have been affected within 4 months, the cost is going to be much less, because after 4 months, they will have to start to use the seed that they had planned for actually seeding for next year. They have to eat that, or they have to slaughter their cow, or they have to move from their little farm. Actually, when we go out and looked at the people that got payouts, 40% of them said that this helped them to stay on the farm. So I think that shows, and instead of having to wait maybe 18 months before you have a real drought, people are really affected, CNN comes with their TV cameras, and you have a pledging conference, and it takes 18 months. If you do it our way, study shows that we are about 4.5 times as effective dollar for dollar as if you wait 18 months. So I think all of this shows, if you can bring in the good practices, if you can bring in private capital, and a very important part is also that to be able to insure yourself for a country to insure itself with ARC, you have to be able to show that you have a national disaster plan. Most countries in Africa don't have that before. And that really helps so that you can learn the next time, and you're actually ready to do something. You know how to distribute the food out. You know how to create, lunches in schools in affected areas. And if you don't have that plan, which most countries don't have in Africa, then you have no chance of really learning. If the World Food Program does a very important job, but very often they bring in people from abroad, NGOs and their own people, to really focus on or get the money out or get the food out. So I think this is really a good example, and it's based on this that, as I said, G7 has decided to help get or committed to that 400 million people in the developing world should be covered by 2020. Now, this is one example. What can be done to get the insurance industry going in developing world? First, let me say that as a general statement, that it's all about risk. And I think this whole conference is really about risk, and financing is about risk. In today's world, dollars or euros are basically free. You don't really have to pay anything for a risk-free dollar or euro. So it's all about that risk premium. So the question is, how do we help reduce or manage that risk? And that is really what banking is about. It's about asset management. How do you allocate your risk? What risks are you willing to take? So the market is about the supply of money and the supply of risk-willing capital, and how do you get that to be willing to take the risks? And to do that, you really have to understand the risks. And in many cases, we don't really understand the risk, or we have a very, very, if I look at Africa and the work I've been doing earlier, you can see that people don't really understand. Let me take the example of financing of SMEs that are so critical to jobs. Most banks, including the one I used to run, think that small businesses are very risky. So what we did at IFC was to go in and guarantee and say, we guarantee you the first year 50% of what you lend to SMEs. Second year, we did it 25%. Third year, we didn't have to do it because they start to recognize that it was actually quite a good business. And I think understanding that risk and the perception of that risk is very important. And that very much goes on the financier side, on whether it's insurance or whether it's banks. On the other side, you have the regulations and the government. And very often, the regulations are not up to speed. If you look at the insurance in most developing countries, the insurance regulations, they're still at a very early stage. Maybe they can handle a little bit of car insurance that normally comes first, house insurance relating as mortgage markets grow and so forth. But I think that is an area. And it's also the question of capacity building. One of the things that we've seen with Africa risk capacity is that many say, why do we need to insure ourselves? Or after a couple of years of having paid the insurance premium, they say, we haven't gotten anything for it. Well, if you think about it, if you insure your house and it's not burnt down after 3 years, you should be actually quite happy and not upset that you have paid insurance premium in excess. But in a very budget constrained world that we live in most developing countries, or in all countries actually, paying out a premium is something that is tough very often for a finance minister. So finding that balance, educating the politicians, educating the government officials is very important. And I think finally the development institutions and government, the public sector, has in some cases, as the example I used for the SMEs, they have to step in and at least initially take part of that risk and guarantee that risk, and that by a way kind of kickstart the markets. So I think those are the challenges, but there's tremendous opportunities, because what we've seen, if I look at IFC, we were supposed and we took more risk than anybody, but we were willing to do that. So we were one of the few development institutions that actually earned money, because we were able to do things where nobody else dared to do it. So I think the opportunity is there, but you just have to understand your risks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just one small follow-up question. You mentioned national disaster plans, and you said they're very important to help understand risk, but also build capacity. Does the Africa risk capacity actually help countries in Africa build these disaster plans?
Yes, that's one of the things that we spend, especially the agency part, the political part, is doing a lot of that work, and that is the key, I would say, the key bottleneck on getting new countries on board. And so we spend a lot of time, and we actually recently decided to even upgrade that even more, because it's so critical, and it has benefits way beyond the natural disaster. Because once you see that, and you start to say, what other risks are there out there, and the governments are starting to recognize that they really have to, as you do today in a modern bank, you have a kind of a risk catalog of all your risks, and you go through your risk appetite statement, and that type of culture is starting to kind of slowly move into some countries at least.
Thank you. Let me now turn to Dr. Thani. We've already had a brilliant presentation from you about the leadership in the United Arab Emirates and your own leadership in the context of the green economy and the green growth strategy of the United Arab Emirates. Green economy is something that, as you know, the UN Environment is very passionate about, because it leads us to a more sustainable development. Could you perhaps speak to us, not only in terms of what is it that you're doing, but also, as I know how involved you are in all of this, how we can link many of these issues of disaster preparedness, of greening, of bringing together the understanding of more sustainable buildings in the context of this larger green economy project that you have, and then link this also to how the finance can be more supportive of a green economy in order to scale it up, in order to take it forward.
Thank you, Dr. Before
Yeah, thank you.
Before start speaking about the green economy and the UAE way forward and the linking of the various streams together. Let me take you back to 44 years ago when His Highness Sheikh Zayed, the founder of UAE, started working and paving the way of a country with a luxury life, provided not only to the UAE citizen but also to the whole world, and send a signal to the whole world that this region can be a showcase in this field and the sustainability sector to the whole world. 44 years capitalizing on the wealth of fossil fuel for sure, and distinguishing the UAEs from so many countries in this region, from the oil and gas dependent countries. He put the wealth into the infrastructure, developing the right mechanisms and the right tools to all investors, business people to come on board. You might ask, what is this, how this is linked to the finance sector and to the other streams. The business people and private sector will not go anywhere if there is no proper infrastructure. So he has this vision, and he started investing a lot on the capacity building to ensure that we have the future generation who's going to take things forward. And at the same time, he started building on the mega projects. Here we're talking about the oil and gas sector and power sector. Yes, we have a lot of reserves, we have potentials, but at the same time, we did not do it alone. We brought international expertise and international companies. And usually the international companies, they don't come alone. They bring the financial institutions with them. So we did not put all our capex and capital money into those projects. We shared certain percentage with the global players, including the financial institutions. 10 years ago, the public-private partnerships were very hot topic, and everyone was talking about it. And we started the PPPs in the 70s, where we brought the private sector already on board with us in the power sector. And so far, the private sector is engaged in all our power sectors so far and moving forward as well. 2005, when we started thinking about the nuclear, everyone thought that the nuclear era is over, no one will continue. And 2007, we launched our vision in nuclear. Since that day, 2007, and until now, until next year, 2017, you're talking about almost 10 years. And we managed to do a major shift in the government, in the international discussion when it comes to nuclear sector or nuclear companies and practices. With the vision, with the mobilization, with the tendering, and with the construction, and next year we're commissioning it in very transparent and highly secured way, sending a signal to the world that we have a vision and we're moving ahead with it and bringing everyone on board with us. Here we're talking about the private sector, the financial institution, as well as the disaster centers with us to ensure that whatever we do are gone through a proper measures and standards. Coming back to the green economy and where the UAE is moving forward, you cannot say that I want to be green without having a vision. And this is the beauty of UAE and the beauty of our leaders, that we always have a vision, and we have very aggressive vision, which everyone is working toward. Second one is the communication. You cannot have a vision without communicating it, and without having the right channels to reach to the right stakeholders. You will not reach, you will not even achieve the vision. And having such platforms where the financial institutions are getting together, hearing directly from the main players on the vision of the country and vision of the world, this is the way which the UAEs always do with our partners, not only with the financial sector, but also with the whole stakeholders. Partnering, we cannot do it alone, and even if we can't do it alone, we prefer not to do it alone, because we're going to minimize risk, we're going to share the profits, share the expertise with others, which means that they will go around the world and do the same experience, and even do it much better in their areas. And this is another message from our side, that we want to showcase, we want to take this expertise away far from our region. The experience which we built, we're always developing, building on, and try to overcome all the challenges and mistakes that we do locally, and even see what are the international challenges, gaps, mistakes has been done. Coming back again to the nuclear program, after the incidents in Japan, we sent a dedicated team there to see what are the issues and what are the challenges and what were the mistakes there in Japan, and we already embedded those measures in our projects to ensure this incident is not going to happen again in the country. In 2012, when His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, when he announced the UAE going to green growth, we did a macro studies, macro scenarios to know what are the implications. Yes, we want to be there, but what are the benefits and what are the added value for such approach? What we discovered, if we're going only to invest 1 to 2% of our GDP, it means that we're going to create a boost into our economy. And 15 years from now, and we're talking about almost 4 to 5% of our GDP growth. We're going to create another 160,000 new jobs to the market. There is huge social elements associated and economical elements associated with the green growth, not only the environmental sectors. We're really proud of the various initiatives. Yes, we talked about the 100 billion dirhams fund, which was announced last year by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, dedicated for Dubai. However, the plan now is going to be beyond Dubai. We're planning to even expand the amount of the fund and see how can we do it in a larger scale in the country and even take it abroad outside the UAE. And when it comes to the financial institution, we're really proud of our financial institutions. As His Excellency the Governor said in his opening remarks, last year we did a study, 79 financial institutions participated. 50% of the total participants said that they already have so many green initiatives being considered in their plan, which means that the interest is there and the knowledge is already there within our financial institutions. 75 projects last year already been financed through our financial institutions. And we know that moving forward, the financial institution is a partner. It's not only a partner, it's a key partner, a vital partner to achieve the vision of UAE 2021. We won't do it alone as governments, we need everyone. And the financial institution is one of the main sectors and main players to achieve the UAE visions. Unfortunately, our colleague from the National Bank of Abu Dhabi is not here, but last year they announced another big investments. It was talking about almost $10 billion investments in green projects for the upcoming 5 years, which means that even our national banks are really interested and they're launching big numbers, which can help us and facilitate the work to achieve the vision of the UAE. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Thani, 2 quick questions. One is how did you plan to build the transitions that you're talking about? Because a lot of countries have this difficulty in terms of skill building, etc. So what kinds of plans do you have to build the skills for the renewable energy sector or for greener sectors? What is it that you have in place? That is one question that is of interest. And the other question that is of interest, and which you've already mentioned, or I saw in one of the presentations also, is the link between financing and bringing into play the green projects. How do you build a pipeline of green projects to enable the financial sector to pick it up?
Okay, answering the first question, which is the capacity building, mainly. Again, before answering this question, I'll go back to 44 years ago. The founder of UAE said to our people, give me agriculture, I'll give you civilization, which means that he encouraged the people to invest in the agriculture, to settle down. You know, the Bedouin life, they keep moving around from one place to the other. And to ensure that the families and the tribes are settled down so their children can have access to schools and they're close to their parents. From there, the story began. And the current generation, which are the leader now within the UAE, started from that point. They've been a huge investment from His Highness to ensure the education reach the right way to those nationals. When we started the capacity building or the green and clean energy in general in mid-2000s, we had already educated and highly skilled people in various disciplines and various majors when it comes to engineering and the other administrative majors. We sent them to the right institution for intensive courses to ensure that they get what the others have already gained, see what is the sector, and coming back with concrete ideas and tailor to our environments. The beauty of UAE that we don't have the bureaucracy that so many has. We have a flexible system which we can change the policy, develop the regulation quickly, and start developing the projects. We have two models when it comes to clean energy. We have an excellent model in Abu Dhabi and an excellent model in Dubai. In Abu Dhabi, when we started the renewables, we directly went investing in projects. We brought international players. We had direct contacts and collaboration with our utility company and started developing big projects, and it was very well successful and the first of its kind in this region. The second model, which Dubai took and which is really excellent, brought the price down dramatically, where they developed the policy and encouraged the private sector to be on board. And we managed to get 2 global records this year. Earlier this year, we got 2.5 cents for kilowatt hour, and a few weeks ago, we got another one in Abu Dhabi, the 2.42 cents for kilowatt hours from PV, which means that the clean energy and green growth projects are always economically visible. It just needs the right capabilities, the right research, the right partners globally and locally, and things will move easily. Your second question is about?
You answered it was with linking up the finance with the green projects. How is it that you have your green projects pipeline?
Exactly. The projects are always there. It's just a matter of educating and sending the right message to either the public or the financial institutions. And this is what we always aim for. We don't block the ideas with us. We have to share it. And the various platforms that we have on the clean energy and the green growth, it's our platform where we communicate directly with the main players, not only from the UAE, but also from the region and from the world.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have time for questions and answers, but I'm going to ask one quick question of my panelists again, which is, we've all talked about the funding gap, and we all know the figure that's been floating around of 5 to 7 trillion per year in order to be able to meet our sustainability agenda. Let me start with Laz. Do you see any really possibilities and opportunities, but also challenges in order to be able to fill this gap? And I'm going to ask the same questions of Nadia and Dr. Thani also.
Well, I think that there is a light in the tunnel. I think things have moved, as we heard in some of the earlier presentations, things have moved just over the last 3 years. I think, first of all, there is a recognition now that the public sector and the private sector will have to work together. The needs, if nothing else, the needs for financing is so immense. There is no government, basically, maybe with the exception here, that can afford to actually do all the things that needs to be done, both in infrastructure and in industry, to create the jobs that are really necessary with the demographic developments, with all the jobs that needs to be created among all the young people in the developing world. So I think that is the good news. I actually had and that was even in the aid community, that was acknowledged. I actually read the declaration back in 2011 in Busan, Korea, where at the big OECD aid conference, the private sector for the first time was acknowledged as an important part of any development strategy. So I think that is a good cornerstone. The second thing is, I think the private sector is recognizing the two things. One is the opportunities in the developing world, especially foreign firms are seeing that this is big markets that they actually can go for, and that has also started to happen and has happened over the last 5 or 10 years. And they have also recognized that green is good. And being green is actually necessary as any part of any business strategy, whether it is because of risk management in the actual real terms, or whether it's because their customers demands it. And you see both things happening very rapidly now, and you see how the successful companies are really now integrating the whole environmental and social aspects into their core business strategies more and more, and that's the successful companies. So I think that is a great step forward. Third, on the which I also think is important, is the financing. We're seeing that the capital flows to develop, even if they has been coming off a little bit, they're still at good levels, and that is happening. More importantly, perhaps, is that the local market, the local financial markets are developing. We are seeing banks that are becoming real players. Even within the developing world, you're starting to see regional banks coming out of Singapore, and even here in the Middle East, you see a number of the banks that are now regional banks rather than just one country bank. You see the insurance industry coming up and being built slowly but surely, and you're seeing the development institutions, as I said, encompassing and looking at how to help the private sector. So rather than just grant money, you're not talking about smart grants to actually mobilize capital from the private sector. And as we heard, we also see new instruments that has come on place, where there's, archetype or green bonds, or a lot of other new thinking, and combinations. Maybe that's the most important part. Combinations of different, insurance with banking, guarantees being used in a smart way, as I said. So I think there are great hopes. Obviously, there are big challenges. Governments have less money, as I said. I think the whole question of education, the tremendous needs that we now see for jobs for young people, I think those are, and the fact that we're still, the temperature of the planet is still increasing at a rapid pace, and so we got a real problem. But I think we're at least working on it now, and I think this conference is a very, very good step in the right direction.
Thank you for those encouraging words. Dr. Nadia, would you like to add to that?
Yeah. Well, of course, as His Excellency said, and as the gentleman said, a lot of things are happening, and both presented it in an admirable fashion. But for me, I think the overarching challenge, the challenge of all challenges, is climate change. And people always ask, do you see a light at the end of the tunnel? And yes, I can see a LED light at the end of the tunnel, but this needs to radiate many times over. We still, ladies and gentlemen, we still have a mighty hill to climb. At the same time, listening to these very accomplished people, there are positive vibes right, left, and center. Well, and again, regarding climate change, most countries realize that climate change is here, it is clear, and it is urgent, including countries in the Middle East. And we just listened to His Excellency, and we are seeing, Dubai and the United Arab Emirates, this is a role model, and as my 4-year-old granddaughter says, sharing is caring, sharing is caring. So we can benefit from each other, and success is contagious. It has this ripple effect. Well, let me just again dwell on some of the real challenges. I will not dwell on the life-threatening, extreme weather events. Why? Because we know them, we see them, and we are, in fact, regrettably, we are living them. But I will, ladies and gentlemen, dwell on a very disturbing reality, and that is climate-linked displaced people, particularly in the small island developing states. And as always, the most vulnerable suffer, women and children. Let me also add that, like me, many of you endure our daily diet of pain and agony, looking at those helpless conflict this time, conflict refugees, running away, very, very scared, running away from bombs and bullets, from ruined environments, and from also damaged, very precious heritage, and with a badly, badly bruised dignity. At the same time, let us remind ourselves, SDG number 16, what does it say? It calls for peaceful and inclusive societies. All what I can say is from their mouth to God's ear. Well, on the more positive side, hard-nosed bankers today are aligning their portfolios with the SDGs because they realize that a risk, a social or environmental risk can indeed be a financial risk, as the gentleman stated earlier. And experience is the best teacher. There are many, many, many lessons learned. And as was stated earlier, good things are happening, positive things are happening, progressive things are happening. Yes, the Paris Agreement will enter into force before we go to Marrakesh next month. And we all remember the face of President Hollande. He was brimming with joy. And I think it was contagious. We all felt the same way. And there is, of course, this strong, strong green drive. And green shoots are, there right, left, and center, particularly here in Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. International banks like EBRD, they have green growth funds and others, and others. There is this multiplier effect, which is very effective and very powerful. The G20, you remember, green, green, green was there. Even in the presidential debate, the US presidential debate, they talk about climate change and green here and green there. So things are happening, things are happening. And ladies and gentlemen, as we have seen and listened to His Excellency, the Arab region is part of this dynamic movement, very much part of this dynamic movement, particularly what's happening here in this leading country. But also, the Arab Gulf states pledged recently $750 million for a new fund on climate change. So again, I believe that Mark Carney summed it all up in just 4 words. What did he say? He said the world needs a financial system that is fair, that is aligned, that is inclusive, and that is resilient. You can write a book about each and every word. But I will also add, ladies and gentlemen, that the world has had more than its share of recycled promises and reports and promises here, promises there. So what the world really, really needs are progressive thinkers and doers, and I underlined this doers 100 times, like yourselves, to recharge, bond, renew, and act. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all roll up our sleeves, put our boots on the ground, because actions always speak louder than words. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say something?
Sure. Last year in 2015, when we been asked to submit our national determined contribution to the climate change secretariat, just before Paris Agreement, everyone around the world, they went around thinking what they're going to submit. For us in the UAE, it took us only 2 weeks to write and finalize our submission. And it is basically because we already taken initiatives on board in our business plans and our strategies, and it was for us normal practice just to put the major projects, the green projects on one document, and we pass it to our partners for endorsements and then to the leaders for the submission, which means that the green growth is already embedded in our strategies, is already embedded in our business plans, and we're going to continue doing that. Green growth and green economy is not an option anymore. And if we really look at the forecast of the developments of the green technologies around the world, we know that the European countries, many of the major industrial countries are going to ban the conventional polluted technologies very soon. If we don't take serious action now, our market is going to be a dumping market for those old technologies. So we have to act, and we have to continue pursuing our efforts for a better future for our generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry I can't open up for questions because I've been told the time is up, but I just wanted to very quickly, if you give me 2 minutes, to summarize this very rich discussion, which in a way frames what is going to happen next. I picked up 10 key points which speak to the need for opening doors and financing sustainability. One, an often recurring theme, which was the importance of progressive and responsible political leadership for change, and the role of this not just at the international level, but also the national and the local level. The second is the importance of transparency and trust in communicating our change agendas. The third, and very important, and especially to this audience, is the private sector engagement and the recognition of their role in transforming markets and transforming markets towards sustainability. The role of infrastructure in order to enable this transformation to happen. The importance of communication about change agendas. Sixth, that green economy is not an option anymore, that we just have to move towards green economy and green growth. Seventh, the importance of concerted action at various levels and the importance of sharing of expertises and partnerships in order to create this change for right policies and right choices. The ninth, the role of capacity at various levels. Do not underestimate this. We take it for granted that capacity exists, but capacity does not exist. And so the importance of building capacity to create this transformation is key across all levels. And finally, the role of knowledge sharing, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the panelists and thanking you for being such a fantastic audience.